Hello and welcome to the MDC Talks. It's your boy Omari Motion Carter, and we are here, the Motion Dance Collective, specializing in the creation, education and presentation of dance on film practice. I'm here, Anna Clifford is here, and we have an international award-winning filmmaker, artist, curator and teacher. Simon Fildes is with us, the legend. Okay, so usually we start off the podcast with the question, what does the term screen dance mean to you? But this is quite an interesting one in a certain case, because I imagine that you were practicing screen dance at a time where it wasn't necessarily the main term of the practice. Am I right in saying that? Or was the term screen dance around when you started to delve into it?
No, it wasn't. I think it was when I first started working on it. I think it was related to what the BBC called dance for camera.
Right.
And so dance film, dance for camera, but or dance on screen, which was came out of a book, I guess, the book, Cheryl Dodd's book, Dance on Screen. But generally, the common term that people like to use, certainly the one that Katrina liked to use, was video dance, which related a bit more to the idea of it being a video art thing, an artist moving image. But even that term wasn't used then. So video art was being used, new media art, video art was being used, dance on screen. Screen dance, no. Screen dance came a little bit later, for sure.
And so do you have a preference of the one that you like to use when you talk about your work? Because I know you've got the Screen Dance Festival. Is screen dance the term that you like to use when describing your work, or does it change depending on the type of media you're working with? Or
it does change depending on who I'm talking to.
Right. Okay.
So people within who understand that term, screen dance, how we use it, or video dance. Certainly, for example, in a South American context, they use the term video dancer. Yeah. And that's very common there, and then widespread use. So screen dance is something not so common there. Dance film is much more widespread, but I think of dance film as being something a little bit different. Screen dance came out of conversations, I guess, and a term that Douglas Rosenberg was using for his festival, and he was definitely very active in bringing that term to the forefront of what we were doing, and I totally got it. I saw screen dance as a more broader, encompassing term to describe all forms of dance on screen. Whereas video dance was definitely something which felt like a practice, an artist-based practice. You combine video art with sort of choreographic practice, whatever that means to dance artists, people working within dance. So video dance was definitely always at the forefront of what I considered to what I was involved with, certainly that collaboration with Katrina. Screen dance is a bigger picture, so screen dance encompassed things like the web-based projects that I was creating, the Move Me Booth project, so things like that, the hyper-choreography, installation, all could come under screen dance, but I wouldn't have described any of that as a video dance.
Right.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, so screen dance obviously seems to be the broader umbrella term that allows for kind of is vague enough to allow a lot of different entities to be involved in it as well. Yeah.
Anything involves a kind of moving it, the art of moving image, creating moving image with the art of making dance.
Nice, thank you. So obviously, we wanted to ask, coming from your unique background, because we know that you started in science, in biology, right? What initially drew you to making dance on film?
So I spent, when I graduated with my biology degree, I didn't use it at all. And I spent the next 10 years playing bass guitar in bands.
Wow.
Amazing! I
That's
didn't know
crazy.
that about you.
Yeah. And that was what was my passion. Yeah. So that, and I was creating music. I was playing in bands. I was doing session work. I was also producing. By the end, I was doing electronic-based music. Yeah, so doing a lot of studio-based work. Um, and I was touring little bits. I wasn't as successful as I would have liked to have been, but it was definitely something I was enjoying
Yeah.
at the time. And it's a hard business to be in, you know, to trying to be a recording artist and touring. And so I was doing that along with other part-time work and varying sorts. But that's where my heart was. Up until, and then I just hit 30. I think I was 30 years old, and I thought, actually, this is a young person's game. So I was enjoying it, and I felt time to move on. And a friend of mine said, "Oh, you should go to art college," because I was messing around with videotape at the time, and I said, "Well, that's crazy because I have a science degree." And they said, actually, that's probably helps.
Yeah.
And I thought, oh, well, that's interesting. So I put together a portfolio and applied to Duncan and Jordanston Art College in Dundee to do a course there called electronic imaging, which was effectively video arts.
Cool.
And I didn't get in the first year I applied, and I scraped in on the course on the second year I applied, and that just changed everything for me. Interestingly, when I was at university, when I was doing my degree, my best friend, one of my best friends there, was an American who's still a friend of mine who lives on the West Coast. And he was doing a course at San Diego University, and he introduced me to a lot of video art work and a lot of contemporary artwork. So I was already really interested in that side of contemporary art practice, even though I really didn't know very much about it. So by the time I got to art college, I was already kind of aware of a body of work and the types of artists that were around. And I was really interested in that, and using video in very creative and experimental ways. And but at that time, yeah, it was an interesting time because it was a transition time in terms of digital media and analog media.
Right.
And because I had a background in music and sound, I was in quite a lot of demand to work with other people doing sound production work on their films. And I was also got very into actually Photoshop was my
Okay.
what I learned then in very early days, and learning Apple Macs and very early days on that. And I really I tell this story quite often, is that I left that course swearing that I would never be a video editor.
Oh, no way! Really?
The simple fact was that at that time, video editing evolved to tape. So the video editing thing, was actually a very linear, slow, laborious process, which didn't suit my way of working because I had already been involved with digital audio editing and sequencing and MIDI and electronic music and all that, and it was really not it was just so frustrating to work on a tape-to-tape basis. So yeah, I left that with going, I'm never going to be able
to do this.
And then actually not that long after I graduated from that course, a friend of mine I was on the course with said, you need to come and have a look at this. And she introduced me to a guy who was setting up a new company which hired out Avid Media Composer systems.
Wow.
And then I edited my first nonlinear piece on that, which involved a lot of looping and repetition, and it was very musical, and I thought, this is just fantastic.
I could do this. Yeah.
Yeah, and then I got a job, and it wasn't as a job as an editor. I was there to be tech support.
Oh, okay.
To look after the Apple Macs, because at that time it was all the advertisements were based on kind of the Mac platform, and it was all what they called offline editing then.
Mm-hmm.
They would still have to go to a kind of form on tape.
Right.
So they were shooting on tape, digitizing a lower resolution into the offline system, and then reconforming on master tape. But even that was just like so fantastic to work that way. It wasn't that way. I enjoyed doing the tech support thing because I'd spent so much of my time at college on the Apple Macs, and I understood the systems there. So that was great. But in that process, I was learning how to be an editor.
That's so interesting. What a unique journey into it.
A journey.
Yeah.
And then while I was there, I was just doing little bits and pieces of my own work on the side, and I wasn't really doing any professional work. I was supporting other editors. So I was kind of learning a trade there as well. And Vari, who's the facility manager, said, "Oh, I've got somebody who is interested in working with you. They're doing a BBC Dance for Camera work, and they're looking for an editor to work with it. And I showed them what you're doing, and they really like what you're doing. So and then that was when I was introduced to Katrina McPherson.
Ah.
She brought the piece that is Pace, became Pace, which was the first Dance for Camera, and that was 1995. I really didn't know much about dance at that point, to be honest. You know, I had seen dance shows, and I had seen mainly kind of physical theatre work, like DV8 or Vitol or. Yeah, but I really, my understanding of what dance was very limited, you know, in terms of, and I wasn't interested in ballet at all.
Right.
So was it a thing then that, okay, you were starting to develop, had you started to develop a particular editing style, or was it a thing of, all right, let me...
I was interested in the musicality of the structure of work. That's what I was interested in, and that's why Katrina, when she saw what I was doing, it kind of teed up with what she was exploring in the kind of formalized structures of editing within, and this was her first journey into nonlinear editing as well. And she'd done all her work on tape before then. And she'd come from doing dance degree in Laban. She'd also done the same course in Dundee that I had done.
Oh wow, okay, but at a different time.
Yeah, at a different time. She'd gone there 2 years earlier, and then she had developed. She'd gone through various things and ended up, on this Dance for Camera. She was working with Marisa Zanotti on this project. And there's a lot of backstory to that project, which I won't go into. But the film that got made wasn't the film that was meant to have been made.
Right.
I'll put it that way. So by the time it came into the edit suite, it was a very different film that ended up with the BBC.
Gotcha.
Yeah. And interestingly, as a film, it's probably had more profile than just about any other Dance for Camera, apart from things like Boy or Liz Agus and Billy Carey's film. There's about you can name about 4 or 5 films, and Pace is one of those.
Yeah, absolutely.
pushed things out a little bit. So yeah, so that started that whole journey of working with Katrina and kind of my exploration with dance, and I was still doing other work. I was doing arts installation projects, interactive projects. I was making video artworks on my own. I was doing sound installations, collaborating with visual artists, and trying to work with computers, and yeah.
Amazing.
That's awesome. That keeps things really flexible then, because then you're not limited to making a certain type of work all the time, right? So you're exploring your creativity within these realms and kind of building your repertoire of method, with creating in some sort of way.
It was a very curious time for me. I look back on it quite fondly as a one of those times when anything was possible.
Right.
For me, I could see it, although I was limited by the sort of computer processing that I had around me, I was still really interested in the possibilities of what art was, or what the experience of being an audience was.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So I was putting in applications for funding to try and develop interactive work, and and during that time, Katrina brought a couple of little projects to me, and she was doing her own stuff, and so we did a few experimental pieces as well.
Yeah.
So that was the start of that journey, really.
So we know that obviously you're experiencing such a breadth of creative practices: directing, editing, teaching, curating, and we were wondering if you have a favorite one. Yeah. Tough question, I know, take your time. But because you do so many different things, have you ever had a number one practice?
I mean, I guess people know me as an editor.
Right.
That's what I do. If people ask me, on the birth certificates of my children, it says, father's occupation, and it says video editor.
Right.
And does that correlate with what you feel is your favorite, or do you think that's just what naturally happened?
I guess so. Mostly I think of myself as a kind of a daydreamer.
Love that. That's beautiful. Because I know from Omari, he's very much known a little bit as an editor, in the sense that people come to him with editing questions, or they want him to edit a project. But I know that that's not his favorite practice. Like, if he had a choice in the matter, he wouldn't be the editor in a project. He might play the role of director or dancer or something else. Is that true?
I guess as time has gone by, you kind of go, okay, now I'm ready to try this role, or now I'm ready to test this. Or you get the opportunity, like a Screendance, the first time to judge, or the first time to host, and just like to feel that energy. It just was like something that I was like, oh, I like this. This might be. I wouldn't mind to get a couple of more of these sort of opportunities on top of that as well. I mean, for me, like, I found that I really, although I do get asked to film a lot, I really don't enjoy it as much as my cinematographer James does, because we have this conversation all the time, and I say, James goes, Omari, I love light, okay? I don't care about content. He said, I just love light. I love my focus is to make the image the best it can be. So that's why I need you, Omari, as the director, to fill that gap of content appreciator in that respect. So I guess every now and then we in our journeys we kind of choose, okay, I'm going to focus on this now. But for me, Screendance allows me to jump across a lot of different things. But each week I have a different favorite, especially when it edits going bad, or I'm like, oh, if I was only just a dancer, I wouldn't have to worry about this part.
Yeah.
I totally get that. I think I like whatever it is I do. I like making people feel something.
Right.
Yeah.
So overarching through line through all of it.
Yeah. So whatever role that is. So when I'm teaching,
Mm-hmm.
I love that moment when I see little light bulbs going on in people's brains.
Yeah.
You know, just one of the you know, you just and people going, you see them and you see their brains just go clunk.
Right.
Yeah,
And you go, oh, you know,
absolutely.
and that happens to me a lot in workshops. And there's certain people don't, but these moments when you just go, you have this impact on people.
Mhm.
You make people feel so, and it's like that with the editing, and I get that same, you know, when I watch people watching work sometimes, and they just go, oh wow, what have I just watched, you know?
Yeah.
And so whatever it is, that's what I'm interested in, is getting people to feel something.
Yeah.
So whether that's directing or curating or editing or teaching, and teaching has the most direct impact in some ways, but in physically or viscerally, I think I know I can have a certain impact through editing.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I have a sort of direct, you know,
Yeah.
intravenous kind of line to kind of make people feel a particular way, you know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I think that comes a little bit from my 10 years working in the music world.
Right.
Absolutely. Music is so
Especially
emotional.
especially if somebody's been involved in a kind of rhythm section, or
Yeah.
you know, as a bass player, and
Mhm, mhm.
working with kind of rhythm.
Yeah. Beautiful.
And yeah, dancing, and you know, dancing for me was always going clubbing, right? You know,
Yeah.
That's my favorite type of dancing. That's the
I
one.
think it's most people's
Right?
favorite type.
whatever it is I've been doing over the years, I can sort of point at those moments, going to certain clubs or you know, certain nights out, you know, just.
So did getting more into dance then start to affect your editing style at all then?
I think it allowed me to explore something that was already in me.
Mm.
It gave me an excuse or a vehicle to explore.
Right.
Yeah, explore something I already felt quite strongly, and I didn't really, you know, I didn't really know it at the time, I guess, you know. And once I started to dig a little deeper and look at the work of, you know, those Judson Church artists in particular, or you know, even before that to kind of Cunningham,
Right.
and just go, wow, there's just more to this than pretty shapes, you know. This is actually there's actually a whole practice here,
Mm.
you know, which I had totally not got, you know. And, the dance brought that side to me, you know, that whole kind of understanding of what a choreographer does, or you know, how someone like Lucinda Childs worked,
Mm.
you know,
Right.
with this sort of micro accumulations, or
Mm-hmm.
sequencing and repetition, and
Mm-hmm.
you know, and just go, oh, I could do that, you know.
Yeah.
I can work with that, you know. I can. It's okay to take some movement and just explore that as a texture, or get people to pay attention or feel in a particular way, or make people disappear, or
Mm-hmm.
make people feel tense, or you know, or whatever that is, you know, that's possible to work with dance artists on screen and create something different, create something new.
Yeah.
It actually has that impact on people, you know. Sometimes, you know, I found some people couldn't watch what I do,
Really?
just too intense.
You mean watch the process of you editing, or?
Oh, just watch what the edits, you know.
Yeah, well, yeah, it's interesting because I always I use your work in when I'm lecturing to show a different editing style to what people are used to seeing, because it's so. I think a lot of the time when okay, so you've got the Fred Astaire pure dance approach, right, of not cutting the body, and so a lot of dancers, when they're going into making work, that's what they do first, is they want to show themselves dancing, but the editor wants to cut. So, but once you understand that power that you have there, or you can empower yourself with that knowledge that that's going to happen, then there's so much more possible. So I try and encourage my students to use what they would use choreographically in their editing as well. We use repetition, we use reversal and other things like that. But half the time, when it comes to making the work in this non-linear way, people tend to be really linear with it.
Yeah.
I think part of it is giving people permission to work that way.
Right.
I think, and I saw it in one of the last workshops I did in February, working with, and they were graduate students,
Right.
And they were experienced dancers, and they were kind of still learning their craft, but I showed them a way. I gave them the permission to do what they already knew they could do, but they thought they should be learning a different language.
Right.
And actually, I gave them permission to use the language that they already knew, but using a different, medium, and I think it's partly it. I think people forget that actually, as an artist, you're allowed to mess things up and
Yeah.
You're allowed to fail. I think people are so scared of failing. I'm doing air quotations. that they don't experiment anymore. They're not as playful as maybe they would be if exactly what you said, if you give them permission to do so.
Yeah, people tend to kind of limit themselves because we spend so much of our lives watching television and films, and we think there's a formula, or we need to do it this way or that way, and they forget all that dance and choreography training they've just been to, which was meant to sort of kind of get rid of all that and just explore your voice, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's half the reason why I actually went on to do the masters. I literally paid to give myself that time to let go of working for a clientele and just and just making for myself again and trying things out, not knowing that there wasn't a brief kind of a harsh brief in tow. But yeah, it's an interesting it's really great when you allow yourself to do that in whatever work you come across, or at least be given the permission somehow, if you're lucky, through clients to get that freedom to make work, or at least have the time to do it on the side and explore things of what you're doing. Yeah, I'm just chatting out loud. I don't know if any of this is making sense, but it feels right.
It's so true.
I had a conversation on a kind of group chat, Zoom chat, and there was one dance artist was worried about you going down the road of exploring dance on screen because other people have been doing it for so long, and I just sort of went, that's your job. As an artist, that's your job, right? You're put in a particular situation, you're given limited means to make stuff, you have to make something.
Right.
It's your job to kind of hack it. It's your job to kind of really mess with it, hack it, experiment it, make it yours, own it.
Yeah.
And why limit yourself because you've kind of been landed in a situation which is beyond your control. So yeah, for sure. Get a camera, own it.
Yeah.
Right.
Why not?
Sure.
I have to say, carrying on from what you just shared, as a dancer, coming from a dance background, there was definitely a certain reluctance in me to experiment and feel confident playing again with like a new art form.
Right.
And I think especially as dancers, we're very, I came from a classical background, so we're very much taught sort of the way things are meant to be, the way things are meant to look. We very much follow a traditional structure, hierarchy, all of these things. And we're taught this format for like a decade or longer, and you're taught to perfect it to the best of your ability. And that's our version of success. So you know, this idea of being playful and experimenting and coloring outside the lines is really terrifying for someone that is taught that control and discipline and perfection is the epitome of success. But I think that's what I've loved about the process. That's what I've now love about the practice, is that it's a chance for me to just explore my own creativity, my own language, what that looks like on screen, how that translates to people, how that how I can create that connection you were talking about. So it's so interesting to hear you say that from where you come from, because it's obviously like very similar, but in a slightly different light, I guess, because it just depends on your background and your training.
Right. Yeah, because for me it was really different. I came from a hip hop background, so we were taught the rules to break them pretty much immediately and come up with our own personal, you know, idea of what that move was. And then we were just taught, you know, then you learn that the tricks get money.
Yeah.
And then you go, okay, I can do these backflips and I know how to get this audition and be captured well. You didn't know where it was facing, what the camera was capturing. I've been to shoots where they've just said, I'll say go, and you just dance until I say cut. You don't know what the track's going to be.
Yeah.
And you're just holding the broom and just waiting for them to... But what film taught me was control, was the other side of things.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
That's
it taught
interesting.
me how to make release forms and structure my shots and know how I was being captured, and it changed how I saw myself. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It was that sort of thing, like being on the other end of the camera. It was going, oh my God, I have a responsibility here to capture these hip hop dancers. So, and a lot of the time they might not know how to be. So it made me, I conversate with my dancers so much more now.
Right.
I let them know, look, you're going to do an improv, but I'm only getting your top half of the body. So maybe some hand tutting will be the best thing for this moment, you know, and we can have that conversation rather than just go until I say stop, because they can do that. But you got if you want people to feel something, then you need to be connected with one another. But it's funny how different, again, coming from different places.
Yeah.
It's all about
interesting.
bridging that gap in the language a little bit. In any way, yeah.
Shall I ask this one?
Yeah.
Or you can.
Yeah, I don't...
Because it's about you.
Yeah, no, we were just talking about how, like, mentorship, and how that was kind of like an interesting thing exploring, because you've been quite a big mentor to me coming up in this industry. And so my first question was, did you have any people who were mentors to you when you were coming up into the dance film world, or was it more of a thing that your collaborators were your mentors? I just wonder about that. Who was the person that you looked up to at the time of when you were making work? Or do you have a mentor now?
No, there were lots of people I've worked with who I've obviously huge respect for. Mentored, taught.
It's an interesting one, right? Because obviously, like, through the film festivals, I've found my mentors, I think. Like, through our gatherings together and chats to one another, it's been like, I found the people who we're all interested in the same work. I know I can ask people who have been in the game a lot longer than me. And that's why it's interesting about that student. You said, like, you know, people have been doing it a lot longer. But Screendance is like one of the only stages where both mine and your film could be in the same screening. Like, I guess in a theatrical way, there'll be someone, what's the word? Not highlighting, headlining the show, or even the music, right? And then you'd have your supporting
acts. Yeah.
But Screendance doesn't really, I don't feel it has that hierarchy, at least not necessarily in a programming sense. But yeah, I feel like I found my mentors through that. But yeah, I was just interested.
You were just wondering if you had a mentor when you were exploring your practice, or if you just took inspiration from your collaborators, like you said.
Yeah, each collaboration, each project. I mean, obviously, I spent I spent a good 20 years working with Katrina, and that in itself was a sort of evolution of a process. You know, because I fed into her practice and she fed into mine. there was lots of artists that, you know, we had the real privilege to work with who were really inspiring along that journey. I couldn't really say, oh, this person was in that process was a mentor to me, because there was. I'll give you an example. You know, one of the first workshops I ever went to in Glasgow was I was on a dance film workshop with Elliot Kaplan. Do you know who Elliot Kaplan is?
No,
I've heard the name.
He was one of Merce Cunningham's videographers.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
He's a film artist in his own right, but he worked with Merce, so he's New York based. Elliot Kaplan, and that was like a 5-day workshop.
Right.
And I remember him coming into one of my shoots that I was doing, and he looked at my camera shot, and then he said, "Oh, you should try this." And he sort of lowered my tripod and did this kind of Dutch angle.
Right.
You know, and I can honestly say it's not an angle I would ever use, have never used since.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I remember looking back at this kind of thing, you know, going, you know, you're amazing, but you're wrong for me.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, and there's that kind of thing where I've met people who I would say have had an influence in me because they helped me find a voice.
Right.
But through little moments like that where I had huge respect for him, what he's done, but actually his voice is not my voice.
Mm. Mm.
And that is a kind of lesson, you know, that you should really take on board, you know, and it's something I say to when I'm doing workshops, I teach people. And I often tell that story, and I say, look, you know, I can teach you all I know, but my voice is not your voice, and your voice is not my voice.
Mm-hmm.
And the way you do things will be completely different.
Yeah.
Mm.
And but how incredible that in that moment you were able to recognize that.
Yeah. It was one of those. It was kind of funny. I felt like it felt like quite an intrusion, but maybe it's because I'd been working in a particular ways over the previous 15 years in music and video art.
Mm.
And I didn't know what I was doing, really. I couldn't say, oh yeah, I knew everything. Of course not. But I knew that wasn't it, you know.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, so I watched that film. Every time I watched that film for years afterwards, I go, that's Elliot's shot.
Oh, yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
So,
Awesome.
yeah, interesting kind of area. Mentoring, no, it would have been nice. Yeah, it would have been nice to have.
I think it's very much also just the time that we're living in. I think like mentoring and coaching is now much more popular than it once was. So it's a lot more common, just in general, like in every field.
Well, yeah, not even that. Even just being able to be free enough to offer people who are coming up advice. You know, some people keep their cards quite close to their chest sometimes. So even just not necessarily having, you know, an official mentor in contract, just to be able to go, yeah, I'll answer your email, I'll do a little thing like that.
Give you my opinion.
It's such a great thing that that you've done for me, and I thank you for that so much. And I always try and pass that on to other people. Email me anytime, and I'll just answer it, like even if I don't get back to it straight away. People
have said to me, oh, you know, I've had people say to me, oh, kind of, you give too much information away, and said, why do you think that?
Yeah.
And they say, oh, well, because then they'll be able to teach what you teach. And I go, but you're not me, and they're not me, and you will never be me. You know, whatever you're doing is going to be what you do. You know, and it may draw on some of the things, but I have no kind of claims on everything. You know, I just have my particular take on it. That is people that will hopefully learn and make better whatever I do, and you know, evolve that. And I've seen that with you guys, you know, kind of definitely doing that, and you know, picking up the ball and making, you know, putting your own thing on it, you know, so which is and you've drawn from lots of different places. And
Yeah, and we have to like the first lesson I teach when I'm teaching Screendance is I bring all the quotes that I found when I started about what Screendance was. And if you look at every quote, Douglas will have a totally different definition to Liz Aggis's one. Rosemary Lee will say something different, more related to environment. And so I give them all these quotes and I go, right, find your favorite one that you feel resonates most to you, and then change it to make it yours. Make your quote for what Screendance is for you, because I feel that's like what you have to do with any art form, is that it's very easy to read a reading and go, okay, they're right. Especially when it's academic in some
When
ways.
it's written.
When it's written nicely.
It's like...
It's just like, yep, that's
Yeah.
facts. They backed it up. And of course, it is an ideology. That's their theory. Great. But yeah, it's good to be able to go, actually, that's not what I agree with, and understand why, that is for you, I guess. But yeah.
I was in a workshop with Jonathan Burrows one day.
Yes.
And there was a bunch of choreographers there, like mid-career choreographers
Okay.
in the workshop, and I was allowed in, sneaked in.
Nice.
And Jonathan asked them all, what is choreography? And do you think any of them could agree what choreography was?
Of
No.
course not.
But none of them are wrong,
Yeah.
Yeah, totally. And they've all done it. They've all been doing it for like 20 years.
They're all established. They've all found their own voice. That's amazing.
I think that's totally cool.
Mm-hmm.
So, do you have a favorite piece of Screendance, Simon?
You mean apart from my own?
Apart from your own. I
Oh, it
mean,
could be
your
your own.
own or otherwise. Or you can give me one of each. I mean, we're just intrigued because...
Yeah, don't want you to lose any friendships or anything. You can just... People are like, what about mine? It's hard as a programmer because there's so many works.
Yeah.
So many, yeah.
There are some that become your favorites because you've not seen them before, and they just have an impact on you, and they kind of blow you away. I've just watched another 200 films in the past, couple of months for
Right.
festivals, and and there's a couple there that go, oh, that's so brilliant.
Yeah.
Good. I really love that film, and I want to show it, and I want to be their friends, the director's friends, because I like it so much.
So do you have a favourite one of yours then? It might be a bit easier.
Yeah.
My personal favorite.
Mm.
I mean, I guess it has to be There Is a Place.
Mm.
Okay.
For many reasons.
What's the number one reason? What's the number one reason it's your favorite? Why is it your favorite?
There's too many reasons.
Because I tell you why. Because it was initially it was done. It was made fast and dirty,
Okay.
and it was done in a way without anybody looking over our shoulder. That it was done as quite a kind of interesting, rapid collaboration, improvised collaboration within a very short space of time. Well, not my edit. My edit was much longer, but the process of coming together was like 5 days, and then I did beyond that. I did about 3 weeks of editing.
Right. Okay.
But the groundwork was laid in within 5 days for that piece. And at the end of that piece, I remember saying to Katrina, I said, I'm not even going to worry about what people are thinking about this film. I'm going to do what I want to do.
Yeah.
Because I'd spent the previous projects, because you learn from different projects. Previous projects, some of it, a lot was like I was too sort of much paying attention to lots of other stuff, funders and who was watching it and all this kind of stuff. And this piece was like, we don't need to do this. Actually, we can just do what we want to do.
Have total freedom.
So I went into the edit suite and I just edited it the way I wanted to do editing.
Amazing.
And I chose the music, and and there was a bit of a process at the very start with Sang Jijan. He just sifted out things he didn't want in it, which was fine.
Right. Okay.
He's the performer, choreographer, and he left me with a bunch of material, and then he just left.
Right.
And then I sent him a rough cut, and he made 1 or 2 comments about it, which I totally got what he was saying, and then
And then boom.
Wow.
and that film, you know, it's still, that was finished 2010. It's 10 years later. It still gets requested as a piece of screenings, and it was, you know, it's shot on standard definition widescreen. It's not high quality look, but it has a, but it makes you feel way.
Mm-hmm.
And it makes you move, and it makes you, yeah, and so it has that kind of impact. That I think when you're freed up from worrying about
Any of those restrictions.
yeah, and it's that thing about giving yourself permission thing. It's that giving yourself permission or being given permission to just do what you want to do. You use your voice in a particular way. So everything up until then sort of pointed to that moment of, you know, so yeah, and then from then on, I said I felt very much like I kind of, although you can still look at a lot of edits I've done prior to that, you could still see that sort of sense of feel and understanding and structure and all that kind of thing. It sort of all led up to that moment as the sort of moment of now I know I'm good at this.
Yeah, you felt like you'd arrived.
I've sort of cracked it.
Yeah.
Even though people wouldn't know that.
No.
Right.
But you knew
But
it.
they'll feel it.
Yeah, they'll feel it. Yeah, but you could look at pace, for example, and say, "Oh, well, it's the same," but it's not quite. For me, it's not quite. I was still sort of learning the craft, as it were.
We were just curious because obviously we know you've watched a wealth of Screendance.
Oh yeah, ours changes every week. Our favorite,
Yeah.
a new one comes out.
Like you said, you see new work and
yeah. And saying that, having watched so many submissions, are you seeing like many common trends pop up? I know you released the thing. What was it? The Screendance bingo card.
Yes, bingo card.
Yeah, which had a lot of common trends on there. Have those bad trends started to dissipate now? Are they still there?
Still there. That's why I felt confident about making that bingo card.
Right.
Because although some of them have evolved because the technologies have evolved, but a large swathe of those tropes, it's no different than it was 20 years ago.
Oh, just for our listeners as well, maybe we could. What were a couple of the things on the card? Short black dress.
I actually saw a film the last time round, which has short black dress,
Right.
warehouse,
Yeah.
reverse. No, it wasn't reverse. Sorry, it was a single shot.
Okay.
There was something. There was there was no sync sound.
Yeah. Okay.
You know, so there was it hit 5. You know, it was, interestingly, it was actually quite a good film.
Right.
But I actually couldn't bring myself to select it because it hit 5 tropes
Right.
in one film, and that was a bit of a shame.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard not to be affected when so much of the same sort of material is being commercialized. I guess is the better term for it. I guess.
You know, the thing more than anything else I see, what I see is people aren't watching other people's work.
I love that you said that because we had this conversation yesterday and about watching other people's work and the importance of watching other people's work and being affected by it, being inspired by it, you know, finding out things that you like, that you don't like, that they have shown you, you know. As a practitioner, as a dancer, I always used to make it a healthy habit that I would go and watch performances. You know, we're encouraged.
How can you form your own practice or taste?
Right.
How can you kind of go on a journey through that?
Right.
And unless you're actually watching other people's works, because for me, I having watched 20 years worth of work, I kind of know. I know what I won't do because I know I will never. I will never put something in a warehouse or an abandoned building
Right.
because I know there is like
You can see the
You've
fans
witnessed the-
1,000 films out there which have the same context. It's not that you can't make a good film in that context at all. Of course you can, and every year I program several films that are in that context.
Mm-hmm.
There are perfectly decent films. It's just for me personally, I just won't do it because of that, because other people do it better, or other
Or
people
you
do
want to
it,
be different.
or and it's because a good 30% of the films I have to watch
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
are in that context. And why not? Because they're cheap spaces. They're big spaces. They're cheap spaces. They've got texture. They've got they're a type of staging.
Yeah, yeah. And I think, there's something to be said about, I think a lot of people get sidetracked to going out and exposing themselves to other people's art because they worry about comparison. And they worry about comparing themselves or their work or their art to other people's. And I think it's so important to recognize the difference. I mean, it's so hard to not do that.
It's important to have an opinion that says, I like this, I don't like this.
Mm-hmm.
I like this because, and I don't like this because.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's okay to do that. I think it's okay to have an opinion or a taste.
Mm-hmm.
But I think, for me, and I was talking to Gita the other day about this, Gita Vigran,
Mm-hmm.
and it's like, when you've seen as many films as Gita and I have,
Mm-hmm.
then actually, I think I'm entitled to have that opinion.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
I don't know. It's
Yeah.
You've done the market research.
I've designed the bingo card.
Yeah.
Exactly.
It's not. I'm not saying I know everything about everything. Of course, I'm not. I am not the arbiter of taste, and thank goodness,
Mm-hmm.
that different festivals have different aesthetics and different
Oh, yeah.
artists make different work, and thank goodness for that. Otherwise, it'd be really dull to have
Absolutely.
everybody doing the same thing. But I think that it's important to kind of see what is out there.
Yeah.
I was watching one video, which was good. Actually, it was quite a nice video. I was watching it and I was quite enjoying it. And then about 2/3 of the way through, this particular piano music came in,
Right.
which is one of those classic bits of, I don't know, what you would use in a ballet class or something like this.
Oh, okay.
And I just couldn't help myself because I just went, no. And all I heard was in the next room, I heard Wynn kind of like laughing her head off.
Because she knew what had happened. Oh, God.
It's one of those. It was one of those gut reactions to something which was just like, I couldn't quite believe, that you would kind of spoil such a decent film
Yeah.
Right.
by doing something like that. But it was like, okay. Yeah. Anyway.
But that's what's really interesting about it because, one of the reasons, and this kind of bleeds into one of our later questions, but one of the reasons we both loved Screen.Dance so much and the experience there was that the conversation was so free-flowing and open, and we could talk about opinions in a way that I really didn't have any fear of judgment. Like, I felt like I could speak my mind and my thought process and just have, like, banter. Like... and I think that's so valuable, especially as like someone that's just still discovering her voice. It's so valuable to be able to just have a creative conversation without fear of like judgment or retribution or yeah.
Yeah, I'm still trying to evolve. I'm still trying to evolve writing personally. Yeah, because I think there is a need for a kind of a critical journalism, which exists outside of a academic analysis,
Right.
and that's and because I think we're sadly lacking in that possibility of people just talking about work in a very what am I seeing, and what is the context in which I'm viewing this work, and why do I have a particular opinion about that, because there's a particular historical context to this work. And so I'm kind of evolving that, but I think it's important. And sometimes, because I sometimes feel that it's quite a relatively small community, that I often think if I am critical, that I'm suddenly kind of nobody's going to talk to me anymore, and I won't have any friends. And,
Exactly.
that kind of thing. So everybody sort of is walking on eggshells a little bit, and so it's finding a voice to that without being offensive, but also being encouraging and developing, and that we all sort of learn from that process, and that's quite hard, I think.
Very complex. Absolutely.
I'm kind of been evolving that, and the Argentinian magazine Loey, which is Susanna's Temperley's been evolving.
Okay.
It's been a good place for that to go, because it feels like it's on the other side of the world, even though it's digital. Anybody can read it anyway, but it's far enough away that I don't feel like it's, I don't feel like I'm shitting on my own doorstep. But I recommend Loey as a place to send stuff.
Okay.
We will check it out.
Awesome.
They're very receptive to that range of writing. I think it's interesting seeing there's two Guardian articles appeared recently. One which was a review of Seema's
we just read it.
Yeah, and then there's the piece which was Richard Alston's sudden conversion on the road to Damascus, and discovering actually choreography and camera can be exciting.
Yeah.
And he's only 70 years old, right, and been running a company for 25 years, and this is where we're at now. When this is the context in which we find ourselves in lockdown, where people are forced to experience dance in different ways, and I think it's a good thing. But it's interesting to see that kind of awakening, or suddenly like, look at this new thing,
Yeah, it's like a
it's like a
reawakening
reawakening every 5 years or so, isn't it?
Yeah. So I do hope that it's a kind of, we've gone up a notch in awareness, and that people are actually more open to looking at work on screen now. But we'll see.
I think that leads perfectly into our next question, which was about obviously your work with your production company, Goat. It includes such a range of work, from shorts to documentaries and installations and beyond. And so we wanted to ask you specifically what you thought about the landscape of the industry changing now, specifically maybe in regards to COVID-19 and the fact that all of this sort of sudden rush of dance on film is happening in a slightly different way. So we just wanted your opinion about the changing landscape and how you thought it was being impacted by the pandemic.
Okay, I think it's a good thing, because it's given people time to explore, and so things are happening which dance artists have previously thought weren't possible.
Yeah.
So, for example, you can't teach dance remotely. Well, turns out it might not be very good, but actually you can. So it's just to kind of, there's an acknowledgement there that actually screen space is not your enemy.
Yeah.
Screen space is actually, and what we still have to get over is this idea of setting up a camera over here and you dancing over there is not screen dance.
Right.
And there are ways, and people say, "Oh, it's too difficult." And it's no, it's not difficult. It's not difficult to create.
Simon's demonstrating, guys. Because you can't see him, he's demonstrating some Screendance technique.
You can divide screen space up in a way that's interesting. It's not that difficult.
Yeah.
You know, you don't need to be center of your shot
Mhm.
dancing all the time.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's not that difficult.
Mhm.
And that's what people have got to find, explore that possibility of,
Yeah.
you know,
Right.
that a diagonal is still your best friend.
Right.
Mhm.
You know, even on screen as on stage. You know,
Right.
Mhm.
you know, it's actually okay
Mhm.
to use that, but in a different way. The closer you are, the faster things happen.
Mhm.
You know?
Mhm.
So, and that's what Richard Elston's been discovering, right? In that article. You read that article,
Mhm.
Okay.
he's like, whoa. So the thing that the downside for me is that people will come to expect all this stuff for free,
Yeah.
Mhm.
and I'm always trying hard to kind of get people to not give stuff away for free
Yeah.
and to really value what they do as you know, or to create stuff that has value that people actually will want to
Pay for
you to pay for,
Mhm.
or at
invest
least
in.
donate to, and you know, it's a difficult area.
It's definitely a slippery slope, especially right now, as you say, with so many people exploring it for the first time and playing.
Also, there are big companies, you know, there are people like Bolshoi, and you know, and they're just giving away.
Yeah.
And why they wouldn't not charge
Normal.
for live work?
Right. Right.
And that makes
know,
it harder for
all
the
it does
smaller,
is
yeah.
undermines other people.
Oh, yeah. That cannot afford to do that.
Yeah. So anyway, it's just a kind of I think it's a discussion we have to have, and as not just, you know, with the public, but as artists, and to figure out ways in which that actually, how do you sustain yourself? You know, how are you going to sustain yourself?
The big question.
I don't know. You can only survive so much on arts funding. You know, you can only be successful so much on arts funding.
Yeah.
You know, you're not going to get every single grant you
Mhm.
put in an application for.
Yeah.
You know,
It's mad.
if you're lucky enough to get any.
Right,
Right.
exactly.
It's a very interesting little thing that's happening here. Everyone's having to move to online, and now everyone's making Screendance, which is awesome, but very weird.
There's pros and cons.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I
Yeah.
mean, there's a lot of positive things,
Right.
but there's definitely some difficulties.
Yeah. Well, we'll see where we end up.
Yeah,
We
of
will.
course.
I mean, who knows how long we'll be here?
Right?
I guess the final question we wanted to ask you is talk to us about what's coming up and how our listeners can follow your work.
I've got actually, you know, a lot of things have happened for me, you know, in the past little while in terms of funding, managing this 1 minute Screendance commissioning project for Scottish artists, for getting a little bit of funding for the festival, then got deferred
Right.
because I lost my venue.
Mhm.
And I've got funding for a new film.
Oh wow!
Hey,
Amazing.
congratulations! That's exciting.
But it's not been announced yet. But we're still in that process of trying to figure out rescheduling. And you just go to www.screen.dance for the festival. You can also have a look on my blog site to follow that, which is www.fildes.work
Okay.
blog. So that's where I put kind of
What you're working on.
what I'm working on. But what's coming up is this film, which will be another short film, which is a little bit of a departure for me in that it has a kind of drama narrative as well as dance.
That's exciting.
It's the draft title, which I still quite like because for various reasons. If I also tell you that 1/3 of the films that were submitted to the Screendance Festival have one-word titles.
Oh, yeah.
Okay,
Mhm.
and again, it's not that they're not bad films. It's just what happens. Okay,
Yeah.
one word titles. Okay, so my new film is going to be called "Do You Mind? Can I Ask You What Happened to Your Legs?"
Oh, wow. That's such a long title.
Wow. It's
Quite clearly not a one-word title.
Wow.
And the other thing is happening with me is I launched a course, an online
Nice.
course, which is
Yeah.
on a Teachable site, which is a self-led, where you can take two things. You can take a full-on mentoring program with me, or you can just have a self-led
Right.
journey through this course. And it has text and me talking away like this, and a bunch of worksheets, about 25, 26 worksheets
Okay.
or more.
Wow.
And
And who's that course directed to? Is that directed to people of different types of industries, or people just interested in screen dance, or makers already?
so it's called Design Your Dance on Screen, and it's a creative facilitation course
Okay.
Okay.
to help dance makers and filmmakers collaborate better.
Great. Oh,
Love.
wow, that's awesome.
And it's, I see it as a kind of a translation toolkit.
Okay.
Because what I've seen over the years is that one of the biggest problems that occur in projects is the lack of common language
Right.
Mhm.
that exists between filmmakers and dance makers.
Right.
And it's a way of, the course is a way of overcoming those issues, sometimes quite playfully, actually, sometimes very practical tools, and sometimes just kind of games and worksheets and things like that. So hopefully I've got 10 students already. So
That's great.
Yay.
I mean, I'm hoping that in some ways that in this new world that I'm working in, that also the universities might take this on board,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and colleges as an idea.
Mhm.
And the whole course as it stands has evolved out of years of workshops and
Yeah.
things that have worked, I know, very practically.
Mhm.
Yeah, so
Ooh.
Amazing. Well, thank you. We'll be sure to put all of this detail in the description as
I
well.
might have to sign up to the course right now.
So that people can have a look and explore. But thank you so much, Simon, for taking the time to talk with us.
Yeah, it's been awesome.
happy to talk to you as always.
It's great to pick your brain. We do it a lot. We love doing it. But thank you for doing it on the podcast.
This is the MDC Talks.